Good morning, Raider Nation. Mr. Monticelli here. It's March 24th as we record this latest Raider Talk podcast. We started these podcasts as a way to connect our school and build community, as a way to share stories of different people, one podcast at a time to help illuminate that we're all very similar on many levels, that people might have differences on a surface level, but when you have a conversation with somebody and hear their story, we're all human beings. We're all very similar in many ways. So right now we're on the second day of the second week of the shutdown, and we're really working hard to create some online content to connect people, because we know that there's a lot of people that are kind of struggling with being isolated and the social distancing. So, the beauty of Fairport is how connected we all are, and we're really working hard to do that even from afar. So perfect segue. Our guest on the show today, I'm very, very excited to have him. When you talk about connections, nobody makes connections better than this person. He's an institution at Fairport High School. Besides being a veteran that's been around for a while, he is a genuine, just a great-hearted human being who makes connections with people at a level that most people cannot. And I don't know what it is about him, but when he's talking to anybody, whether it's the superintendent, to a food service professional, any student, he makes them feel like they're the most important person in the world in that moment during that conversation. So I'm very excited to welcome Mr. Hargrave, Kyle Hargrave, to the show. Kyle, good morning. Welcome.
Dominic, thank you for the glowing introduction. That was really beautiful, man. Thank you for your kind words.
Absolutely. I mean every word of it. Thank you for being here. I know this is kind of out of your comfort zone, and I had twisted Mr. Hargrave's arm a little bit, but he said to me, whatever, we have to get out of our comfort zone a little bit during this time, and everybody's got to chip in to help out. So I really appreciate it. I know a lot of staff members and students will take a lot of comfort hearing your voice.
Thank you, Dominic. I've been tuning into the news somewhat, and our governor, and I'm not going to get too political with you, brother, but our governor Cuomo said that everyone's got to sacrifice and during this time. And being on social media is not one of my fortes. It is out of my comfort zone, but I do miss my students, and I do miss the administrators, and I do miss the teachers. So I'm willing to do this podcast with you, Dom.
I appreciate it very much. And like you said, we miss everybody. School sometimes is chaotic, but it's kind of like I equate it to like Thanksgiving. It's beautiful chaos. So, like the first day of school being shut down was kind of cool. Hey, I got some time to catch up on some stuff. But after like day two, it's like, okay, this isn't okay. And we want to be back in the hallways with you and back in the classrooms, in the cafeterias for that beautiful chaos. But Kyle, can you share with us, what's your experience been during the last couple of weeks? I'm sure it's been a whirlwind like everybody else, but what's your experience been like?
This has been an amazing experience. I've never been through anything like this, nor has any other American. I lived through 9/11, and we've had, which was horrible, but we had several ice storms where school was shut down. But this is just something that is really just amazing to sit back and just observe it going on in front of you. I'm trying to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. I go on walks a lot with my dog. Mm-hmm. I've been reading a lot. James Goosey, who is a professor at Fairport High School and a former student of mine, which I'm proud of, has given me 2 books to read, and I'm fighting through them. Tom Robbins' book called Fierce Invalids for Hot Climates and Jitterbug Perfume. 2 good books that I'm trying to fight through, and I'm real pleased that James shared them with me. I'm also reading a book, 11/22/63, for the second time by Stephen King, just a fascinating book. So I certainly haven't had any boredom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those are great recommendations. I thank you for those. those simple things, and I know you're famous to me for your walks. You're religious as far as your walks. When I come into school on a typical day at 6:30, you're there. You're the one car in the parking lot already, and you're usually taking a walk in the dark. And I you sometimes you startle me, but I'm used to it by now. So I just say, "Hey, good morning, Kyle. Have a great day." But throughout the day, I can tell, like, if you need to just clear your head or recenter yourself, you'll take a walk, whether it's midday, afternoon. That's something that you do on a religious way to really center yourself. Can you share with us, where that came from and how does that help you?
Dominic, you're very observant. I cultivated that walk-in from my mentor, the late great James Bostwick Novak. He was my student. I was his student teacher 29 years ago, and he's the godfather of our psychology course. He's the godfather of our sociology course. He's the godfather of our Eastern religions course. All the super courses that our Fairport students take were all. He was the igniter behind getting those courses into our curriculum at Fairport High School. So at the Eastern religions class, when I was student teaching, learning from him 29 years ago, he would oftentimes take his students out of the classroom, and he called it a kinyan. And you pronounce it kinyan, and it's an Eastern philosophy that where you go on a walk and you just try to center yourself on being in the moment. You're not thinking about the class period that's upcoming. You're not thinking about a test that perhaps you struggled on. You're not thinking about your girlfriend or your boyfriend that perhaps just broke up with you, or your parents that perhaps are going through a divorce. All these myriad of things that we go through. When you go on a kinyan, you just try to center yourself and be in the present moment. And I thought it was fascinating as a college student. Here I am learning from this guy that's been teaching for, I believe, 15 or 20 years at the time. And he's taking his students out of the classroom. It was so non-traditional that I don't do it as much as he did in my present day of teaching, but at least personally, I can do it on my own. And by that, I don't take my students out of the classroom nearly as much as Jimmy used to. But just individually, it helps me, and it's pretty interesting when people notice it. And I find in the morning when I do it, I get to school at 5:27 in the morning every morning. And that's another trait I cultivated from Jim, is that you get to the building where you work at, and if you have the building to yourself, and it just kind of gets you going in the present moment on what you have to do for that particular day. So I find it to be really helpful in my teaching career.
Yeah, it's so powerful. A lot of things that you said. One of the blessings for this shutdown is that I've had a chance to take a walk with my family every morning. We've been exploring new trails. There's so many trails around here on the east side. It's just such a soul nurturing activity. Just go for a walk, go for a hike, and to start your day like that. And like you said, if you're having a moment, do it again. Just go for a walk, get some fresh air. It's so powerful. And I love that you brought up, Jim Nowak. A lot of our students, any student that's had knows him because he's living through you and your voice, and you're carrying on those traditions. Most students don't know. I know people really love our teacher appreciation days for different athletic events. The teacher appreciation awards, those are named after Jim Nowak. So all you students out there, every time you acknowledge a teacher for a teacher appreciation moment, understand that comes from Jim Nowak's name is on there, and some of these values that Mr. Hargrave is preaching, that those live on with him as well. The mantra that I love and I enjoy seeing Kyle in the hallways or popping my head in his classroom, and we say EPP to each other. Can you explain EPP?
Dominic, after you and I spoke yesterday, I checked my emails later on in the day, and Tony Exton, my esteemed friend and colleague, audiovisual cat at Fairport High School, he sent me a disc. He sent me a disc of a 1994 clip where Jim Nowak, myself, and Principal Dave Paddock were giving a speech. It was the inaugural Brotherhood Sisterhood week, and it was just a precious email that Tony sent me. It was about a 10-minute clip of Principal Dave, Jimmy, and myself just talking about connections and and brotherhood, sisterhood, and it was just wonderful. It was just the timing of it was impeccable because of our conversation yesterday, Dom.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was as a colleague at Jimmy's, not as a student teacher, but as a colleague now, he became such an influence and a friend, a loyal friend of mine that my wife and I we organically, naturally let him be our kid's grandfather. So my two kids, Talia and Quinn, they affectionately would refer to Jimmy Novak as Papa Jim. And Papa Jim would show up at our house unannounced, knocking on our door, ringing the doorbell, and we'd answer the door, and Talia and Quinn would say, "Oh, my stars, the pizza dude's here." And Jimmy would have a pizza for our family and just, sit down and have dinner with us. And I can't tell you how many times he did that and how impactful it was for my son and daughter, because unfortunately they don't have a connection with their biological grandfather and grandfathers. And Jimmy filled the bill naturally and loyally in that fashion. But all the times that we were connected, even before I had kids, Jimmy gave me a book that was called The Precious Present, and it was about this is back in 1998, Dom. It was, and I imagine it was about a 35-page book, and the crux of the book was just being in the now, being in the moment. And from that moment, he would always take my hand, and in the palm of my hand, he would put in magic marker, black magic marker, EPP. And just go on. And it would stay there for a couple of days, no matter how much Purell or hand wash, it would stay there. And he would see me in the hallways and say, "Remember, EPP." And it's something, unfortunately, he died in January of 2011. So I try to carry on that legacy of his, to live in the now, to enjoy the precious present. I now have it burned in my skin. I love the connection there because one of my former students that graduated in 2000, his name is Adrian Clark. He's a professional tattoo artist, and he actually burned "Enjoy the Precious Present" on my arm in honor of Jimmy Novak. And when I tell my students about enjoying the precious present, I'm sorry to get long-winded here, brother, but when I tell my students about EPP, several of my students have a Latin background, and they say "Carpe diem." And I say, yes, Carpe diem, seize the day. And several of my students have seen the famous movie Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams.
Yep.
Yeah, the late Robin Williams made that mantra really in our culture, to Carpe Diem, seize the day. So they're synonymous, and it's something that helps me in stressful moments. And sometimes my students can connect. Oftentimes, I've had a handful of emails in the past week and a half from students, and they ended with EPP, Mr. Hargrave, EPP. So something is working there. I just hope it sticks with them.
Yeah, no, that's a great story and how it evolved in your mind and your soul, and it's so important. It's just those little tricks to remind us to center ourselves and live in the moment, like you said. It's so powerful right now, so important right now. Obviously, with the uncertainty, that's probably in my mind the hardest part of this whole thing. This uncertainty. We know we're going to be okay. We have to be serious about taking care of others and people that have a pre-existing health condition. And the uncertainty of how fast this thing spreads. We have to be smart and careful, but we're going to be okay. And we don't know when we're going to be back to normalcy. So that's the uncertain part. That's a struggle, but we know we're going to be okay. And we're going to get through this, and we have to plan for the future, but live in the moment and not worry about everything. And I really feel for our seniors in particular. If you stop and think about it, like going through a struggle, you brought up 9/11 earlier, right? Our seniors, if you think about it, they were born right after 9/11. They were born in the 9/11 era. They've grown up around, school shooting drills, and now they're dealing on their senior year with this virus that they don't know, that the uncertainty part of it. So, people often say that teenagers are, they have, they have more struggles now. I'm like, yeah, they do. They're dealing with more stuff. So I really feel for our seniors, feel for all of our teenagers out there, and we have to do better for them as a society and as a school. So I'm dedicated to working with everybody to make sure that happens. So I'm glad you're bringing up a lot of these, coping strategies that you've used, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to take comfort in some of those.
Dominic, I'm no angel. My son is a senior at Rush Henrietta,
Huh?
and he's looked forward to his senior year of lacrosse. I can't tell you how much that kid has put in the weight room, cross training.
Mm-hmm.
After basketball practice, he was a kid that was doing wall ball for a half an hour to 45 minutes in the snow, right, left hand wall ball. And right now, he's got a heavy heart. I have a heavy heart because his lacrosse season is in total flux right now. Like you said, we just don't know if it's even going to occur. And there's larger issues with people in health and people losing their jobs. But it's helpful that my friend and mentor, Jimmy Novak, impacted Quinny. My son's name is Quinn. And Quinny knows that you just can't plan on these kind of things. And at least he was prepared for the moment, and he's trying to live in the moment, and he's trying to persevere and take it day by day and hope for the best, man. But just seeing how much the kid worked, just seeing how much he put in the time and the effort, which I value as a coach. You know, you get better, not during the season, you get better out of season. And he's internalized that, and it's just too bad that he's not able to benefit from it right now to see the reaps of all the work that he's put in. But it's a life lesson for him, is the moral of the story.
For sure. No, that's real, though. That's real. There's a lot of athletes out there that's their identity. They worked their whole life for their senior year. There's a lot of musicians out there that have worked their whole life, countless hours of practice. And, they might, possibly might not have their final concerts of their senior year. There's a lot of art students that might not have that art show, and just senior in general to have those experiences of your senior year. That's what I think they're concerned about, and we're all concerned about. But again, focusing on the now and what we can control, and that's how we approach every day. And for any students out there listening, we're going to do everything within our power, within our control, to make sure that you have the best experience you can in the time that we have left with you. So please know that. I like lightening it up a little bit here, Kyle. I know you're a huge music buff and a movie buff. So it's a good time for comedies these days for a little levity during this time. What are your favorite comedy movies of all time?
I just sent my revised movie list to my little brother and my longtime assistant basketball coach recently. I always revise a movie list. I have a top 155 movie list that I take very seriously, Dominic. And I got to credit Dylan Gillette, who about 20 years ago, he and I were in the men's room, and that's about all you need to know. And he's challenging me about my favorite movies, and I said, "Oh, piece of cake." And I went home and I got out a scratch pad, and it became more of a challenge of love than I ever thought it was going to be. So, make a long story short, Pulp Fiction and Stand By Me are my two favorite movies, and I can't pick one over the other. And people ask me, at face value, they seem so different, the two cinematic features. But if you really break it down, like I have, the crux of both of those stories is loyal friendship and loyalty. So those tickle me, and those will always be my favorites. But in terms of getting some really good giggles, there's a movie called What About Bob with Richard Dreyfuss and Bill Murray. That is always a classic in my family. All four of us in my family, we can recite lines by Bob Wiley, played by Bill Murray, and Richard Dreyfuss. Awesome movie, timeless movie. That's the movie that my kids used to get ready for bed with. And we used to show movies like Benny and June, What About Bob? Believe it or not, a movie called Vision Quest, which is about a high school wrestler.
Yeah,
we didn't show them a lot. we didn't show them a lot of Disney movies, man. I don't know if that makes me a bad dad, but we showed them a lot of like movies that you could just get stories out of and apply to real life scenarios. Jaws, that's another movie my kids grew up with. Jaws. But for classic movie for funnies, I can't go wrong with What About Bobby? Can't go wrong with The Big Lebowski. But The Big Lebowski has some risque language in it that a lot of our teenagers might not dig. But you asked me, and I just wear my heart on my sleeve. Those two movies are probably my two funniest movies. What About Bob? Big Lebowski. Yeah.
No, I appreciate.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite movie?
The Dude Abides, right?
The Dude Abides. Yeah.
Yeah, In that, back to that, what about Bob? That's a sleeper. That's a really funny movie. And Bill Murray, he's had, what's the other one? That Groundhog Day. That's a sleeper classic as well. Like, it's a funny movie with a great storyline. So that's another solid one. I know we touched on this yesterday, just you and I, and you really got to reflect, because like you said, in that moment, we're like, oh, that's easy. Then you start thinking about how many great movies there are. It's a really challenging exercise.
It
I
is.
will
It is.
I will say this: last night, after I tucked the kids in bed, I rented Slapshot, the classic hockey movie from the '70s. Man, that's funny. It's kind of, the story isn't great, but it's just just a funny movie. There's so many
What
good
are
ones.
brothers' names in that? The
Hanson brothers.
the Hanson brothers. They hold up in cinematic history. The Hanson brothers.
Yeah, it's a classic. There's so many good ones, Kyle. Like I said, it's hard. Like Trains, Planes, and Automobiles is a classic. Napoleon Dynamite is hilarious. Super Bad, I forget, that's probably the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I never saw it. But Airplane, I think I cut you off with Airplane. Thumbs up.
Yeah, if I have to throw in a Chris Farley movie. Tommy Boy is a classic. Caddyshack is up there. That's probably like a one. That's probably number one. Caddyshack, I love every scene. I like this. In comedies, you don't need a deep story. Story is nice to weave in there, but you just want to chuckle in every scene. And Caddyshack does that. And lastly, Old School with.
Yeah, another good one. I love Rodney Dangerfield. You can't go wrong with Rodney.
Well, that's I think that's I love that movie too. That's Back to School. That's like the 80s.
That's
the
Back
80s.
to School. Now you're thinking of I'm thinking of the movie. Yeah, Will Ferrell. Yep.
Back to School. Right. Will Ferrell. Lastly, I think I know the answer to this because we talk music a lot together. But if you're on a deserted island, which you kind of are now with a lot of technology, if you could only have three musicians to listen to the rest of your life, who would they be?
3 bands. Oy. Well, number one is Led Zeppelin. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. Led Zeppelin would be number one. All 9 albums are beautiful. Matter of fact, after this is another aside. After we were done talking yesterday, Dom, there's you recall a couple years ago when our school was getting redone and repainted and remodeled, and all the wires were down and the ceilings. I struck up a friendship with a painter there, and we still maintained a text friendship. His name is Jake Lupiani. Mm-hmm. And Jake is a big. Honestly, I just met him in the hallways of Fairport about 3 or 4 years ago, and he heard me playing music in between classes, and we just started talking. And he's a tremendous music aficionado. Taught me a lot about music in the last couple of years, and so often, sporadically, we send each other these texts. And yesterday, I sent him a text from a deep cut of a Zeppelin song called "The Crunch." I'm sorry, man. I'm deep into Led Zeppelin, but "The Crunch," and he's a guy that would get the meaning of "The Crunch." It's a Led Zeppelin song off the album "House of the Holy." So Led Zeppelin number one. Sorry to get off on a tangent, man, with my Zeppelin, but Steely Dan would be number 2, and then the third band, that's what presents a challenge, because I love my Steely Dan, I love my Led Zeppelin, but then I get in the moods of Kurt and Nirvana and Lane Staley and Alice in Chains and Robert Nesta Marley and Billie Holiday. Chris Cornell's, I can dig him, but I don't know if he sits at the same cafeteria table as Lane and Kurt.
Fair enough.
I like Chris Cornell, though, man. Trust me, but we're talking about a desert island, man. Right, I don't know. I don't know. You got 3 albums or 3 groups you'd have? And I can't leave out the Estrogen. Like, the Estrogen music I love, too. Like Natalie Merchant from 10,000 Maniacs. Oh, man, she could sing to me every night. She's beautiful, got a beautiful voice. Mm-hmm. But that's a tough question, man. It's a question you and I are going to have to continue with. What are the 3 bands you take?
Sure,
look, I didn't even mention the Beatles, man. I'm gonna get tomatoes thrown at me. But go ahead, let me hear yours.
It is a very, very hard exercise for sure. I love Zeppelin as well. It's hard. I mean, there's so many. There's so the depth of how many songs they have and the energy, the different kinds of energies they can bring. So Zeppelin's up there. Bob Marley, really, puts things in perspective for me and cools me out. Like if I get upset, I'll put on some Marley, and every little thing's going to be all right.
Yeah,
The third
absolutely.
the third one is hard. We kind of have to do like a Mount Rushmore instead of three. There's so many. I love Allman Brothers. The the musicianship and the instrumental pieces of Allman Brothers are great. Like you said, Nirvana. Um, it's hard. Pearl Jam. Yeah, it's a hard one. So I got to think on the third one for sure. We got to make this a Mount Rushmore exercise.
I'm
But it's a
with you,
fun,
brother. I'm with you.
fun exercise. So for the sake of brevity, I could talk to you all day, Kyle. You're the best. I love talking to you. But when people tune into these podcasts, there's probably the sweet spot as far as time. But we're going to sign off here in a little bit. Is there anything, final message here for now, for the day, for students, for staff out there?
I just been impacted by so many people at Fairport, Dom. I've been there. This is my 28th year professionally, 29th year when we factor in student teaching. And there's just so many people I could name, like Dave Thering, who impacted me as a student teacher at Minerva DeLand. I could talk to you for 8 days a week about Jimmy Novak. Corey Miller and we go on Kenyans together. When the weather improves, he's a loyal friend. Sometimes when I see Brian Kruger in the hallways, he's a former student of mine, now a colleague, and we just say the dude abides, a little Big Lebowski relate, and we just go on and teach our students. Joy Miller, Amy Clausen, Leah Greenman, the health teachers, Nicole Bruton, and Jennifer Priel. It's a beautiful place that we work at. Leanna Watt. I'm just real fortunate to be at Fairport. And I bleed Rush Henrietta. I'm not going to hide that. I bleed Rush Henrietta. I coach for Rush Henrietta. But when I got out of college, Fairport was so loyal in hiring me and nurturing me through the way that I didn't look back. And when I first started teaching, I taught at Martha Brown, and I developed a friendship with Jim Sluzarski, a retired teacher, James B. Kearney, who's a retired teacher, Professor Kearney, and Eric Zimmerman, we're still friends, but Eric Zimmerman in particular, he coaches the boys JV basketball team at Fairport, whereas I coach the boys Rush Henrietta basketball team. And we have some epic battles through the last 10 years, just really intense battles. But our friendship, we don't let the battles cloud our friendship. And one of the first days during a lockout that we had a week ago, Eric Zim and I went on a 5-mile walk in Bushnell's Basin, drinking coffee, shooting a breeze, just really, really rarely even talking about basketball. So we got it good at Fairport. Sometimes we moan and groan about this, that, and the other, but when you step back and look at it, Fairport is a wonderful, wonderful place, man.
No doubt. That's a fact. And I love listening to you talk, because when you're talking, and I think about, what makes Fairport so special, what makes you so special, and what I would challenge all of our listeners to do, students, staff, parents, everybody, is, what makes you so special, Kyle, is that you do the little things to build those relationships. You take a minute to have a conversation, and you make eye contact. Jim Novak dropped off a pizza to your house to make that connection. You and Corey go for a walk together, and that's maybe a 2-minute exercise, but those are life-changing things that you do to make connections with people. And that makes, you get out of it what you put into it. So whether it's a relationship, your time at Fairport High School, your time on this earth, is you get out of it what you put into it, that Mr. Clark always loves to say, and that's a fact as relationships go. So I encourage everybody out there, do whatever you can to reach out, although you're social distanced, whether it's through technology, through a text, through a phone call, through FaceTime, through Google Meet. I know a lot of our teachers are using right now, and that's how we're on this call right now. But however it is, just reach out to somebody, do the little things, and check in with them and have a conversation. And once we get back to normalcy, have that face-to-face conversation with that eye contact. It's so powerful and life-changing. So continue investing in relationships. We'll get through this together. We're going to be stronger on the other side of it. It's going to be It's going to take some time. We don't know how much time, but we will get through it together. So, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. Nothing but love for you. All my best to you and your family. I hope to see you soon. We're going to have to do these phone calls at least once a week. All right.
I love your closure, Dominic. And I also got to give a shout out because even in this lockdown, I miss yelling down the hallway to Carrie Klein, Carrie Griffith, Carrie, longtime English teacher, and Donna Russell, busting my chops, and Joy Miller. You talk about opposites. Joy Miller and I, I don't know if you could get more opposite in terms of our political spectrum, in terms of our cleanliness of our rooms, but she's one of my main conciliaries at Fairport High School, and I miss bantering with her and John B. Davis. So it's a sweet culture at Fairport, Dom. I appreciate you reaching out to me, and anytime you want to do this again, man, I'm definitely will do it at the drop of a dime. So you keep healthy, keep loving your kids, and remember to enjoy the precious present, brother, and have a Zeppelin day, man.
Right back at you, Kyle. Thank you so much. Take care. Be well.
Cheers, dude. Take care.
Cheers. All right, Raider Nation, there you have it. A great conversation with Mr. Hargrave. As a reminder to everybody out there, we're these Raider Talk podcasts. We're shooting to do more of these as we're out on break to stay connected. Not break, sorry, shut down. So look for Raider Talk podcast. Look for morning messages. Different staff members are going to give you essentially a morning announcement, but we're going to rotate around to staff members and students so that you can, again, another way to stay connected. Lastly, we have a social media challenge on Instagram. This is being facilitated by the class officers and the class Instagram accounts and the staff FHS Instagram account. Essentially, just take a picture, shoot a video or a note or a message about what you're doing while you're home during this time of social isolation. What are you doing to stay connected, to cope with just relieve stress? And, the theme for this week is gratitude, an attitude of gratitude. So please send a post, and we look forward to seeing everybody out there, whether it's Raider Talk, whether it's a morning message, or whether it's an Instagram post. Just to be aware as well, we're working on a Fairport High School YouTube channel. Simply, it's Fairport Raider Talk on YouTube. So we're going to house these morning messages. We're going to house these Raider Talks podcast conversations there. So everybody hang in there. Take care of yourselves. Stay connected, and we'll get through this together. Until the next time, take care. Bye.